What you see on the screen is my prediction for how every single game down the stretch will go. I'm not going to go through each one and explain in detail why I have it this way. This is just kind of, I went through it and gave my picks. If you want to, screenshot this and look at it and decide if I am stupid or not stupid, please feel free to do so. But what I wanted to do was, using the ESPN playoff machine, figure out who I think is going to make the playoffs given their schedule and given how I feel about them as a team. So after I picked every single game, I now have predictions for who I believe will make the playoffs and what seed they will get. So let's start off with the AFC. As you see, I have the Chiefs getting the 1 seed here at 14-3. I do not have them losing another game this season. This is a little bit kind of how this thing can be not exactly a perfect system though, and I'm not trying to pretend it is, because I predict that the Kansas City Chiefs will win each individual game down the stretch. But if you ask me, will they go 5-0 down the stretch? I don't know. That's hard to do. Even a good team winning 5 games that you're favored in, it doesn't always work out that way. So I have them winning the 1 seed though. I have the Bengals getting the 2 seed and the Bills getting the 3 seed. Worth noting though, there's a Week 17 matchup between Buffalo and Cincinnati. I gave that edge to Cincinnati. However, if you think Buffalo would win that game, then Buffalo would actually jump up to the 1 seed. So that will be a super important game, especially if the Chiefs lose a game down the stretch. That could determine who gets the 1 seed in this scenario. If everything plays out the way that I mentioned it, but Kansas City loses a game, this would actually mean that Cincinnati would get the 1 seed. So, that's kind of how that works at the top there. Titans seem pretty locked into that 4 seed. I don't see any other team being able to catch them in the division. I also don't know if they're going to catch Buffalo or Cincinnati at this point. Those 2 teams just feel red hot. The Bengals are definitely red hot. The Bills are just good, and Bengals are good too. Also, the 5 seed feels like that could end up getting locked in as well. I feel pretty confident Miami will get the 5 seed. So in that scenario, it would mean that the Titans and the Dolphins play each other in a playoff matchup. Would be a pretty interesting game against 2 teams that are very different. So that could be fun. Also, I have the Ravens. I still have the Ravens managing to get the 6th seed here. So even though they don't have Lamar, that's tough. I think that's why they will sort of fall out of the division race. I had them splitting the series. They played the Steelers twice. I had them beating them once and losing to them once. That felt fair to me. So that's a loss on the schedule. I also had them losing to the Deshaun Watson Browns in a couple weeks, because I think that with Watson, that team is maybe a little better than the Ravens, but I think the Ravens should still be able to get into a playoff spot. Hopefully Lamar is healthy by then. I assume that Lamar wouldn't play in any of the games for the rest of the season. Maybe he will though, and that would obviously help their record potentially. I also have the Jets still sitting here and making the playoffs, although I have to say it is worth mentioning, I have the Chargers going 9-8. If the Chargers were to win one more game, the Jets would get knocked out. So I have them in, but they're barely in. This is the whole list here. So you see, they still kind of have it set up as though there's only 6 playoff teams. As we know, there are 7 now. But, we'll start off division by division through the AFC. The AFC East, which I have every team winning at least 8 games. New England, I have only winning 8. But if they could swing a couple of games the other way, it's still not out of the question that they could be in the playoffs. But then going over to the AFC West, as I mentioned, the Chargers. Yes, I have the Chargers not making the playoffs, but they play Miami next week, and they play Tennessee the week after. I have those both as losses. If they can just flip one of those 2, and then they do win out the final 3 games, well, that would be enough then for them to be 10-7. The Jets would be out, and the Chargers would actually be the 6th seed in that scenario. I do not have Las Vegas or Denver making the playoffs. I think the Raiders are solid, but I just think that they did put themselves in too much of a hole. They have too tough of a schedule down the stretch to really, I think, go on a deep run here, unfortunately. In the AFC North, you also notice there's another team that is very much in the hunt right here and has a very real chance to potentially make the playoffs, and that is the Cleveland Browns, who I have nearly winning out. The only team I have them losing to down the stretch would be the Bengals next week, and if they win that game, that would be enough to put them into playoffs if everything else held the way that I have it. So they are a team that you can't count out just yet. They don't have the most difficult schedule down the stretch. Some tough games, but I think with Watson, he didn't play great the first game. I'm willing to chalk that up off to he was probably just rusty. But you absolutely cannot count them out just yet. I think they will kind of get back into it a little bit. The Steelers, I had them at 10-7. That's a solid season. Again, they always surpass my expectations. Maybe they'll do that again here. And then for the AFC South, Colts, Jaguars, Texans, not really doing too much. Now let's go to the NFC. I have the Eagles as the 1 seed. I have them going 16-1. Again, do I think that they will go 16-1? I don't know. Feels logical. They could end up dropping another game at some point just because, again, going 5-0 is hard. But in each of these 5 individual games, yes, I do think they will be favored in all those games. So that's how I did this thing. The Vikings went 15-2 in this system, so they are a team that definitely has a very real chance to get the 2 seed. I think they probably will. I think the 49ers, this is where things get kind of complicated. I don't think the 49ers are dead just yet. I have them beating the Buccaneers and the Seahawks in the next 2 weeks, and then I have them beating Washington the week after, and then the Raiders the week after that. If Brock Purdy really does suck, those could all 4 potentially be losses. However, I do have to say, even in that scenario, even if all 4 of those are losses, they would still be a playoff team given how I put everything else on this board. So I don't think all 4 will be losses. I think they look fine. Maybe they won't all 4 be wins, but at least a good chunk of them I think will be. So because of that, I have them as the 3 seed. I think they'll get the 3 seed because I have Tampa Bay only going 9-8 right here, which would still be plenty to get them into the postseason. But it's not dominating, and they would play the Dallas Cowboys. And the way I see it, it seems almost a lock that Tampa Bay and Dallas will be playing each other in the playoffs. I don't think Dallas is going to catch Philadelphia. Maybe they could, but I don't know. That it feels like, they're currently 2 games back from Philadelphia. I think that's just too much. They do play the Eagles, though, this season. So if that game flips, maybe they could find a way to, get into the 1 seed conversation. But then, there's Vikings there, but at least get the division lead conversation. But it feels like we are going to get a week 1 rematch, Tampa Bay versus Dallas. Seattle is the 6th seed. I do have Seattle winning just enough at 9-8. And then I have Washington going 8-1. And it would actually come down to, I have them getting the same record as the Giants, 8-1. There'd be a tie for 2 500 teams at 8-1, which would be a lot of fun. It really would come down to the game in 2 weeks where they play each other. That would be who gets that 7 seed. Heading over to the full list in the NFC, let's start off with the NFC East. Kind of talked about it. Top 3 teams there I have as a playoff team. The Giants are out due to the head-to-head tiebreaker against Washington, where they would have tied Washington and lost to Washington. I wonder if there's ever been a situation where there's been a team with a tie that loses because of a tiebreaker. But like I said, for the Giants, all they have to do is win 1 game that I have them losing, and that would be enough to get them into the postseason. They don't have that difficult of a schedule, but there are some tough games on this. They play the Eagles and the Vikings, the 2 top seeds I have in this, and then they play the Eagles again. So they play the Eagles twice, they play the Vikings, and then they play Washington. It really comes down to that Washington game. You can lose those other ones, but you got to beat Washington, I think. NFC West, like we said, San Francisco, Seattle, those 2 teams, they feel like playoff teams. Now, Seattle has been struggling as of late. That's fair to say. If they were to, for example, lose 1 more game, then they are out, and the Giants and Washington football team would be in. But, for now, I do think that they will win enough games to get in, given this. Also, at the NFC North, you have the Detroit Lions, who, listen, all they have to do is kind of flip one of these 2 games. One of the games that I have them losing. I had them losing to the Jets. If they win that game, they're in. I have them losing to the Vikings. If they win that game, it would be enough to put them in. So they don't need to flip 1 game. That would put them above Washington in this and get in. The Lions are a playoff contender. They are truly in the hunt. Green Bay and Chicago are not, and I don't think Atlanta, New Orleans, or Carolina are either. Atlanta's the one you could maybe talk yourself into. They do play Tampa Bay in week 18, so you have that chance right there of if you can potentially beat them week 18, they would still need to make up another game that I don't have them making up to be in position to take the division lead. But in that scenario, it would be a do or die week 18, which would be very fun, very stressful for me as a Tampa Bay fan. But, there's an opportunity for that. That's how they would get in. But it's going to be tough. But yeah, those are the teams I have making the playoffs right now. Last season, I kind of did this every week down the stretch. I might do that again. I might not. I don't know. But it's a fun little thing to do. So those are my thoughts. Let me know. What do you disagree with? Because again, you're going to disagree with me on some of these games, and it's also it's an imperfect system. It's kind of just a way to really, in my opinion, the reason I do this is to see which teams have which teams have the track to get to the postseason, given schedules and everything. I don't look at this and say, oh, I guess the Lions aren't making the playoffs. I look at this and say, okay, this is probably what the Lions have to do to make the playoffs, because I'm wrong about picks all the time. It's hard to pick football games. Even if you're really good at getting picks, you still only get like 3/4 of the games right anyways. So, should be pretty interesting down the stretch. That's what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.